Oh, look at that. We got a wide shot of the studio. How's that?
That looks good.
Okay. Hey, everybody. This is a live episode tonight. The big question is, will the United States presidential election tank the classic and collector car market on Bring a Trailer Cars and Bids, B-Car Market, and more? We're going to talk about that and make some predictions. This is Bid Nerds. The bidding starts now. Bid Nerds is your YouTube car game show. Yes, it is. Welcome, everyone. And look, we're doing a live show, and we're doing it on a Thursday night instead of a Wednesday. We apologize. I was out of town yesterday, so we couldn't do the Wednesday show, but we figured, heck, let's go ahead and do it tonight. And we are here. Thanks for hanging out, especially all of you who are here in the Nerd Herd watching us live. Thank you guys so much for being here on a weird night, and we are conflicting twice this week with football. We apologize for that, even though who cares about NFL? It's way more fun here. My name is John Polnik. I am your host of the Bid Nerds. We are in the downtown Las Vegas Container Park, along with my partner, Michael Deeb, over there in San Francisco. He's inches away, but he's actually thousands of miles away. What's up, Michael Deeb? How you doing?
JP, where were you yesterday? We were all here, all of us, me and everybody in the herd. I kept calling in on my app to do the show, and you didn't answer. What was going on, man? Were
Liar.
Yeah.
You are a liar. So this is, okay, for all of you Nerd Herd fans, we love you guys, and I seriously do feel bad if anyone didn't get the message there. I try to put something out. I did put something out on Instagram yesterday. That's why please follow the Instagram handle as well, because I'll always put messages up there. If we're going to postpone the show or do something different, I'll always put it there first. That's the fastest place to get nerd info. So that's Bid Nerds on Instagram, at Bid Nerds on Instagram. I was hanging out with my buddy Leaf, who I think is in the chat right now. Leaf, how you doing?
Yeah. Short of a Skyrider over Boise, that's the quickest way to reach most of our audience. Everybody's in the chat. I can't believe we're doing this on an off night. On short notice, and everybody is here. Patrick LeBeau is in Atlanta hanging out and watching from Atlanta. What's up, Pat? Chris Carbine and the gang. Carbine went to a concert with Ann, and they actually, it wasn't a concert. They were listening to George Bush speak at a veterans museum, and they got up and left in the middle of Bush's speech to go home and watch Nerds, only to find out we weren't on. So shout out.
Still better.
Yeah, seriously. But imagine Carbine and Ann getting up in the middle of Bush's, Bush seconds the speech, and they're like, where are those two going? And they're like, we're going to catch the last 5 minutes of Bid Nerds. So that's just awesome. We love you, Chris Carbine and Ann. Thank you so much. Sorry we missed you last night, but thrilled that so many of you are here tonight. Tonight's actually going to be really fun, JP. I can't wait till we dig in.
Yeah, well, let's do that. The big question tonight, look, if you saw the thumbnail, you saw what it is. Our question tonight is, will the upcoming election tank car values and the collector and classic car market? Look, I promise we're not going to get into who you should or shouldn't vote for or who we're voting for or anything like that. What I want to bring up is the idea, or at least ask some questions. I think, this is my opinion, that going into this just in under 2 weeks, no matter what happens on Wednesday, that's next Wednesday, not this coming Wednesday, right? We don't know. Do you guys think that there's going to be an answer as to who the next president will be Tuesday night? I think most people kind of think that probably not. The question is, how long will that take, and how much instability will the results either way cause? It's entirely possible that we could see craziness in the street. People are losing their minds, regardless of which side of the aisle you may sit on. And it doesn't seem like anyone is going to be happy, or at least there certainly will be no big majorities. There's going to be a certain section of the population that's probably going to be freaking the F out. And I'm curious what you guys think. How much of the population is just not going to be able to handle the results whichever way they go? And how will that affect markets? And that's really what this show is all about, right? We talk about cars, and that's the fun part. But it's kind of like any other, like this kind of stuff is going to affect the stock market. It's going to affect the housing market. It's going to affect it's going to have all kinds of economic effects. the whatever happens after this election. So how concerned are you guys with the prices of classic cars? Do you think they're going to crash? Do you think this is going to cause a spike? Do you think that your guy or gal or whoever you're hoping wins, if it goes one way, there's going to be a huge appreciation, and if it goes another way, that everything's going to crash? Let us know in the comments. We'll try to dig through them. And, we made predictions on the last episode. I think some of this stuff is already affecting outcomes because every auction I've watched this week has been weird. Right? I mean, you're laughing, and I assume that's because you agree, yeah? Or
comments, no, Patrick LeBeau wrote, meh, Wednesday will just be like Monday. And I laughed at that. Sorry, JP, keep talking.
Love it. No,
I was cracking up at the comments. The herd always wins. Sorry.
Herd always knows. Well, let's get to the results of the auctions that we talked about on the last episode, and maybe some of these results are a result of people already kind of getting the jitters from the election cycle that's just 2 weeks away. What was the first car that we talked about on the last episode, Michael Deeb?
All right, JP, before we circle back to the 1968 Porsche 912 Emory race car, I need to remind everybody in the herd that me and Sahan and Yuri and John are on a text chain that is purely about cars and listings. And so before I even had a chance to check in on this listing the other day, Sahan had told me that the car fell flat, and boy, did it ever. So JP, this is a really cool 912 race car that was built about 23 years ago by Rod Emory for one of his clients. They took a 912 shell and put a 2-liter flat six and built the car to race competitively up in the Pacific Northwest in a series referred to as, and let me say this correctly, the Sovren events in the Pacific Northwest, SOVREN. Super cool car, 2-liter flat six built, probably makes about 200 horsepower and weighs about 2,000 pounds. All sorts of cool things, RS fiberglass bumpers and driving lights and plastic windows, full roll cage and racing seats, and then of course Bilstein shocks and turbo tie rods, front and rear sway bars. All the goodies that a 912 wouldn't have come with are on this as basically an affordable short wheelbase 911 race car. And this car raced in period. Now, Emory is not selling the car, but our buddy Tazio Otis and Derek Tam Scott over at OTS and Company in Berkeley, California, listed the car with 77,000 miles and true mileage unknown in the livery that it was born with when it was rebuilt as a race car by Rod Emory over 20 years ago. JP, the problem with race cars is they appeal to a very narrow audience. If you have half a brain left and you see a roll bar running across the top of your windshield, that's not a car you can drive on the street without a helmet on. If you hit the brakes too hard, you could bash your head on that thing and knock yourself out and then really get into some trouble. And that's assuming you have half a brain left in the first place. So JP, I knew this was going to be a tough sell. It is the off season. Two schools of thought are well, if you're preparing for next racing season, you should be buying a car now. But at the end of a racing season, I think that race cars like this are at their softest. And so it's an election. It's a soft time in the racing season. It's certainly a soft time in the sports car season. And so I just feel that despite this being a very cool car with incredible provenance and some pretty sexy photos, that this one was going to have a tough go of it. JP, I still thought this car should bring about $150,000. You took the under at $140,912. And our buddy Max Monahan from Classic.com joined us remotely from his home in Denver, Colorado as third nerd. Max took the underneath you, JP, by just $912 at $140,000 even. John, our car failed to sell at just $75,500 on 17 bids. For all the reasons I've already stated, that's why I think this car got hit so hard. It's very interesting. You would think that the Emory Provenance would be worth six figures, but this car, JP, didn't even break $76,000 for an Emory built car, bumper to bumper. He did everything to this car. I mean, that's incredible that basically there's just not a buyer out there right now. This car in the shadow of our opening statement, that is the election going to crash the market? I think for all the reasons I stated, the market is soft for a race car, but at 75,500, I'd say that has a lot to do with potential buyers speculating on what next year could bring. You talk about what the craziness could be in the streets on the Wednesday after the election. What's going to be the craziness in the market and with the banks after somebody is sworn in February? And I think the potential buyer for a car like this is looking at that time frame, and there's too much uncertainty for them to go, you know what, I'll wait. And so, JP, that's my take. What do you see when you look at this result for this caliber of car, given that where we are in the calendar year and in the election cycle?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now it's all about sure things, and this car is not, because of all of those details you talked about in the car. It's just not usable. And, you know, this, you just mentioned that obviously this is an Emory car. We talk about that. We say it over and over and over again, how big a deal that should be. The question is, okay, yes, it's also a race car that is streetable. Emory was the person that kind of crafted this car. So if you are the owner of this car, does it make sense to edit what Rod Emory, the great Rod Emory, did to make this a street car? Because let's face it, to make this a proper street car, you have to pull out most of this roll bar. You have to put in a half cage, right? So you're cutting all this extra support out of there. Now it's no longer a full-blown race car. It's a stripped-down street car that is now more streetable. Would it make sense to put some pole position Recaros or something more vintage in there or something to kind of give a little bit more creature comfort to that interior? All that makes sense. That's probably what I would do with the car. But again, now you're messing. It's like going back and going, oh, this Van Gogh is really good, but the guy's missing an ear on here. Let's add an ear on. You know, you're editing a masterpiece. I think in this case, probably would really help the seller. If the seller ever wants to get any kind of real money, anyone who owns this car, if they ever want to realize an Emory special and the premium that comes with it, I think they have to do some mods to this car. And I think that's all despite everything that we talked about when it comes to the election and all that kind of stuff. I think this car is just a difficult car for someone to own all the way around, and the provenance of the name attached to it just isn't enough. But I don't know. What do you guys think? That number that it reached is a hell of a long way from what most of us thought, with the exception of course, someone in the nerd herd, Sergeant Tom got a Yahtzee on this one. Congrats, man. That's amazing, because we were all saying that this car was going to be, well over $100,000. So that's pretty impressive. Matt Weitzel said he drove his race car around, today with the full roll cage and stuff like that, which proves our point that you have to have half a brain. And I know Matt will be the first to confirm the fact that is in fact the way he drives. Likewise. I don't know. It's such a cool car. Brian also reminds us too that it's still just a 912. Doesn't matter what you do to a 912, it will always kind of it'll only hit a certain threshold no matter how badass you make it. So I don't know. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below regarding the results of this Emory Outlaw 912 streetable race car. Was the failure to sell because of election jitters, or was the car just not right and just not something that enough people are going to want because it's just not usable? Let us know in the comments, and let's move on to the next car. What else did we talk about, Michael Deeb?
All right, JP, our buddy Matt Crandall over at 911R, you know them as Avant-Garde up in Portland, Oregon, recently sold a 1985 Audi Quattro with like 50 or 60,000 miles on it for $94,000. We didn't cover that car, but Matt told me that he said, I've got a 15,000 mile one coming to market. So we decided we were going to take a deep dive on this 1983 Audi Quattro with just 15,000 original miles. Now, this is the 2-valve motor and not the 4 or 5 valve motor that made like 200 horsepower. This one only makes 160, but this is a US car. And based on the VIN number, it had been deciphered that this may in fact have been one of the first couple hundred that were constructed in 1982 and sent to North America in 1982 as early release 1983 brand new Audi Quattros. Super cool car, all-wheel drive, all the rally provenance. And this one, JP, red and tan might not be your favorite color, but when you see one that basically looks like it's still sitting on the showroom floor, you would think that people would get pretty feverish about it. Again, 911R produced their own best comparable value for this car by just selling one recently with like 4 times the miles for nearly $100,000. With that in mind, JP, I thought this car was going to do a little bit better. I said that it would sell for $101,000. Now, you brought up an excellent counterpoint saying that just because the one with 50 or 60,000 miles brought 94, this one might not have as broad appeal, and it might only appeal to fewer people to have one that essentially you're not going to want to drive. With that in mind, JP, you took the under below the result of the previous car at $85,000. And then Max Monahan from Classic.com, who joined us from Denver, Colorado as third nerd guest host, he said that he believes there is a fervent Audi fanboy community out there. Matt drank the Kool-Aid and said this car would bring a record number at $110,000, taking the over. JP, you turned out to be the soothsayer on this one. $80,500 is where our car hammered, and it is where this car sold on 24 bids. So, JP, I do tip my hat to you because of your explanation. You called it. Just because the white one with 60,000 miles or 55,000 miles brought nearly 100 doesn't mean with less miles you're going to have a greater value because it has a narrower appeal. And you made a really good point that absolutely bore out. This car sold for just 85. Talk to me about the result in light of your pretty spot-on bid.
Well, I still think that's pretty dang good for this car. I mean, and congrats to the seller and everyone involved. This car is now someone else's. And that's, I think that bodes well for the classic car market and may contradict our theory that the election is freaking everyone out. The fact that a car is special like this, but maybe not that special, is still bringing $80,000. I think there might be hope, especially if you've got something classic and you're worried about possibly selling a car right now in this environment. I know I would be. If I were getting ready to sell something on BAT or, Cars and Bids or something like that, because I think people are freaked out. But this is definitely an exception. I think that's partly because, too, when it comes right down to it, it is a very, very nice car. It's about as nice of one of these as you'll ever find. What do you guys think of the results of this car? I was trying to find a picture before the show. I think I mentioned on the last episode, I owned one of these, not the Quattro. I just had a two-wheel drive one that looked almost identical. I think the interior was all black. Maybe it was brown. I don't know. I don't remember. But it was a fun car to own. And my friend Leaf, who is I think he's still in the chat, hanging out in the Nerd Herd. He probably remembers that car. Leaf was a big Audi guy in the early 90s, too. He had a really cool, one of those early model 90 coupes. I think it was a 91 or something like that. And kind of a cool... It was kind of like a chiffon white, if I remember correct. It was almost yellow. It was a really cool car. But anyways,
JP, let me ask you, 1983 Audi Quattro. 83 is also the last year for the 911 SC, which made about 180 horsepower. If we're looking at a Guards Red 10 83 SC coupe with 15,000 original miles, what does that car bring on BAT if Avant-Garde is shooting and representing? What do you think? That's a six-figure car, would you say? Would you agree with that sentiment?
I mean, it's like CJ and SD1 was hanging out in the Nerd Herd. He asked the question, why not buy, the 15,000 buy one that's got more miles for $15,000 less and actually drive the thing instead of just looking at it. And I think that's probably the answer if you're the guy that doesn't already have... Look, I don't think anyone spends $80,000 on an old Audi like this that doesn't already have an SC that he wants to drive around or something else. He has a garage with 3-4 a dozen, who knows how many other cars. This is not the first car on someone's collectible list. This is a car that's in addition to all the other cool ish they have. With the exception of the occasional really weird Audi fanboys, which there are, and I think Max definitely, I don't think he drank the Kool-Aid. I think he was mainlining it. Shout out to you, Max. You really seemed like you were into that old Audi Quattro BaT. But yeah, I mean, I don't know anyone who's this would be the first car on the list, and absolutely the SE would be what I would go for. But anyways, let us know what you guys think in the comments, and let's move on. Some other cars to cover here real quick. What is the next car on the list?
All right, JP, I selected a 1973 International Harvester Scout 2 4x4 with a 4-speed manual that was on Bring a Trailer out of Round Rock, Texas. Checking in on this car, JP, I had selected it for Max, who's a Midwest guy and loves his trucks. I thought I could throw him off a little bit by asking him to compare this to the recent, over the last 6 to 10 years, proliferation of early Broncos and K5 Blazers that are bringing six figures in really good condition. This International by no means is of that sort of restored or refurbished or all original condition, but a cool car that comes in at a bargain price when compared to the two I mentioned previous. So JP, super nice car. Kind of love the colorway. I think we all sort of dug the vehicle. Wouldn't be our first choice, but if money becomes an issue, would you start looking at one of these as an alternative to spending $40 or $50 on a nice K5 or Bronco? JP, I thought $18,000 for this car would get it done. You took the under at $15,250, and Max, who liked the car and really liked the colorway, took the over at $21,000. JP, I missed out on a Yahtzee by $500. Our car sold for $18,500 on 38 bids. 38 bids winds up being our high bid count for the three cars that we covered over the last show. That's pretty good action. It didn't quite break 20 grand. I do sort of think that's probably all the money that one of these could ever bring. Anything you'd like to add to that before we go to commercial?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you brought up the Bronco, right? This is an alternative to something that, so many of the modern cars that are coming out these days are kind of homages to the originals. The Bronco being a very obvious example. The design sensibility, the design language of that vehicle is hearkening back to the original Bronco. The thing about the original Broncos is, 2-3 years ago when they were launched, that was in the middle of a shortage and people were paying way over sticker for those things. Ford is not in a situation where they can charge more than sticker price MSRP for Broncos anymore. In fact, it's quite the opposite direction now. There are in many markets anywhere from 100 to 300 days inventory on things like new Broncos, right? They are not moving new Broncos anymore. So the value of those brand new vehicles are rapidly depreciating, just like spiraling around the toilet bowl. Same thing goes for Jeep Wranglers and stuff like that, which is why I think this vehicle, this Scout, didn't bring big money as the value of the brand new stuff continues to go down. I do think that the value of old stuff like this that essentially the new stuff is trying to copy is going up. It's like an inverse relationship, but it's not an equal inverse relationship. If the value of a Bronco goes down by 25%, which it has, I don't think the value of an old Bronco is going up by 25%, but I think it's going up by 2.5%, or 3% or something like that. They're creeping up because kind of like what CJ and SD was saying, I think if I understood where he's going, this is more usable because you're not putting as much capital out there. If you buy something like this for $15,000, $20,000, this thing's going to be worth $15,000 or $20,000 no matter what you do to it, no matter how much you drive it, for as long as you drive it and as long as you own it, until it's illegal to own gas-burning vehicles, which who knows how long that will be. So if I want an off-road vehicle, I would way rather to buy something classic like this and, look cool while you're doing it and not have something that's just depreciating like a stone. And then also have some other kind of modern car as your daily driver. But again, that goes back to the whole idea that most people that own classics, something like this is not the only car that someone like this is buying. when they bought it. This
so-
is just something to add to the ranch or something.
So at 18.5, you think this was well bought?
I think it was. I think it was. I think
Yeah.
that a little attention on this vehicle would have brought a little bit more money. A better
Sure.
presentation, better
Sure.
photos, a nice detail job, and maybe the big thing that I think would have helped this vehicle,
Livery.
not just a livery. And I glad you said that, because we talked about that on the last episode. But look at the underside of this vehicle. It's got a lot of surface rust, which is all go spend the $2,000 on one of those ice blasters. They can make this thing look brand new, as long as it doesn't have any cancer, which by and large it doesn't look like it has. It looks like this thing is pretty solid. This is a perfect candidate for an ice blast detail underneath. You could really make this thing look great underneath. Detail the exterior, add a little livery, take some romantic photos, and this car potentially brings 10,000 or more than what I think it has the possibility of getting nearly 30 if it's presented correctly. But
the
that's
average
why presentation is so important.
According to Classic.com, the average price for a Bronco Scout 2, an International Harvester Scout 2 is $35,000. So that could definitely have been played. And the one thing, JP, that you said on the last show that you didn't say yet was paint the wheels white, which I totally agree. Would have looked really good. Pop. Well, that's it, JP. Those are all the cars. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I do apologize for talking about the Bronco. I think we're confusing. We know that this isn't a Bronco, but there is no modern version of a Scout yet. Even though it sounds like Volkswagen might be doing it. I think they bought the
criminal
license for the name, but we'll see what happens. All right, the show isn't over, guys. It's time for predictions. We've got a bunch of really cool cars lined up for predictions, and we will get to those right after a message from Godden Classic. Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you gotta call our friend Steve at Godden, this guy. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about, and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. Hey guys, you're probably looking at your watch and wondering if Bid Nerds will ever end. So you better talk to our friends at Our Smiths to make sure your Rolex, Tag Heuer, AP, or any fine timepiece is in tip-top shape. Our Smiths, fine Swiss repair. All right, Anthony reached out to me today and said that he's at some kind of party. So unlike the rest of the nerd herd hanging out, he's not with us in the chat. We miss you, Anthony, but we really do appreciate all of you who did make it to this off-night Bid Nerds live show. Thanks for hanging out. And if you are in the chat, it looks like, as usual, there's more of you watching right now than there is thumbs up. So go ahead and give us a thumbs up. That helps bring more people into the live feed, and that's always awesome. So please do that now. And I've seen some new names in there, so welcome to all the members, new members of the Nerd Herd. If you're watching this show right now, and maybe you've been watching for a while, maybe you've been lurking, or maybe this is the first time, I really encourage you to get in the chat and comment and introduce yourself. You'll meet some of the greatest people in the Nerd Herd in the chat. We really love those guys and guys and gals that are hanging out in the Nerd Herd. They're the ones that really make this show. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us on a live show. Okay, big question tonight. Do we think that election jitters are going to cause a crash in the classic and collectible car market, specifically on bringing trailer cars and bid, speed car market, and more? I think a lot of people got the jitters. Some people are like, whatever, nothing to see here. It's like the meme, the little dog, the dog sitting in the room that's on fire and everything's fine. I don't know. Are you the dog, or are you the guy that's lighting the fire like me? I don't know. Let's see what's going to happen. We've got some really interesting cars to talk about. Let's get to predictions. What's the first one on the list? Michael Deeb.
All right, JP. Chef has come out of the woodwork and is re-engaged in Bid Nerds. Welcome back, Chef. Haven't heard from you in a while. What was he busy doing? Something called AutoFest or whatever. Anyways, Chef sent you and I this listing, which is this super, super cool. I mean, John, the effing holy grail of air-cooled Porsches. A 1993 Porsche 911 Carrera RS 3.8. So they made over 1,000 964 RSs in 1992 for the world, and then subsequently made a bunch of racing versions of that car called the Cup car. And those cars are narrow body, sort of Carrera hipped, no wing, seam welded chassis. They have the same 3.6 liter motor as the street car, but they make a few more horsepower, about 260. This car made in 93 and a few in 94, John, and I don't know what the final numbers are. I think just 55 in 1993 alone. For the world, 12 of which were designated for the Japanese market. This is a totally different animal. You've got the wide body from the turbo, magnesium wheels, big red brakes, all sorts of scoops and stuff. The car has a 3.8 liter motor that I've read conflicting reports that it makes somewhere between 300 and 375. I have a sneaky suspicion that these street versions make 300 horsepower and the RSRs make 375, normally aspirated from a punched out 3.8 liter motor. This whole car is from Weissach. And JP, despite it being a street car, this is pretty damn close to a race car in every respect. Just unbelievable materials, unbelievable rarity, and unbelievable value. JP, a little history about our car here. 12 of these were built for the Japanese market. It's interesting that this is still a left-hand drive car. This is one of those 12. It was owned by the notable Japanese collector Shin Okamoto though it was imported to the United States from Japan in late 2010 under the show and display exemption. It was then acquired by the founder of WhatsApp, Jan Koum. Later spent time in Miami, Florida as part of the Garage 26 collection, before being acquired by the current owner in 2023. So super cool car. It looks like a very detailed and interesting provenance. It's worth noting, JP, that our car is listed out of Salt Lake City, Utah, showing 16,000 kilometers from new, which is just about 10,000 miles. So this is an unbelievably rare car. It's here in the United States. These cars were never brought to the U.S. originally. And it has, collector low miles. This is an incredible condition. And it's interesting how many of these special RS cars, JP, from the 90s were speed yellow. Although it's not my first choice, and you and I have mused about how yellow is a poor resale color, I do think special built air-cooled 911s from the 90s are iconically painted in yellow. And so in this case, I don't think the yellow will hold back the value of the car. I do take issue with the fact that this car is on Bring a Trailer. Even at a premium listing, I think these photos are dog meat. I think the presentation is actually pretty poor. These photos don't do anything for the romance of this car for me. And we're talking about a car, JP, that is in the millions of dollars in value. And we'll get back to the numbers when you get a chance to talk about it. But my early returns on this, JP, is that I don't think it stands a chance to retail on BAT. This is a car that I think is so special and so valuable that it needs to go to one of the live auctions by Sotheby's or Gooding or Haggerty's Broad Arrow Group and all these guys. I think it belongs to one of them. I think they have the client bases to bid on a car like this. And a show like that becomes an international event. A car like this, despite it being so special and Chef finding it 5 minutes after it was listed 2 weeks ago, I still think a vehicle like this gets lost on the more mundane, more pedestrian audience that Bring a Trailer typically has. So JP, I send it back to you. Incredible special car. Poor presentation, in my opinion, and lost on a channel this big. This car deserves greater attention than this will happen here. And now you run the risk of burning the vehicle. Whoever encouraged this seller to trust them to list it on Bring a Trailer, I think that was poor advice. And I think it's not going to do him any favor towards reaching potentially a record number for the model because of the condition and the provenance and the low miles. So this was a bad idea that was poorly executed, and I don't think it stands a chance at success. JP, what do you think?
A lot of people love BAT as a platform. I'm one of them, and we've seen them find great success in selling great cars. Things like Singers bring all the money in the world. But I feel like the people who want to buy something like a Singer, let's just go with a Singer versus this car, because
it's a good car.
Singer's worth $1 million, couple million, depending on which one. This one should be as well. The person who is interested in a singer is a contemporary person. It's someone, maybe that crypto bro, or maybe a true enthusiast, or maybe just a, new money billionaire douchebag.
BD.
Yeah, it's the person that wants this car. I don't think is one of those. I think this. I mean, they're most certainly pretty likely to be a douchebag, maybe. But. This is an oligarch car. This is a car for someone who has had money, and maybe his family has. This is the holy grail. This is a vehicle that represents more than just a collector car. This is something genuinely special. And even though it's only worth a couple of $1 million, and the Singer might be worth the same, the guy with the Singer is going to get more floss when he shows up to Supercar Sunday. Most people that see this car roll into a big car show are just going to assume that it's a nice looking wide body 964 of some sort that's had some aftermarket stuff on it to make it look like an RS. Not a lot of people, some people will know, but most people will just assume it's a replica of some sort. That's not to disparage cars that are homages to, or cars that have been modded to look like this. I'm certainly one of those people that tries to do that sort of thing. But a Singer is going to get more flash. The person that wants this car is not hanging out on BAT. The Sultan of Brunei is not watching listings online for online auctions, right? They want to go to something like that Sotheby's auction or the Broad Arrow thing, and they want to be wined, they want to be dined, they want to have an experience around purchasing it. And I think that's what drives the sale. A lot of these really high-end cars, there is no experience associated with buying a car on BAT. It's cool. Okay, look, I'm on here, I'm auctioning, but you're sitting at your desk at home, or maybe you're on your phone somewhere. You're by yourself. How many times have you? I know you've experienced it, Deeb. I've been with people and they're like, "Oh, I just bought a car," and everyone's like, "So what? So does everybody. No big deal. What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
People don't understand. And you're in a restaurant. I just won, and like, you have to pay for this thing now. It's not winning.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, would you give the waitress your order so we can get our food now?
Right, I got a plane to catch. I almost missed my plane last night. I was hanging out with Leaf at the restaurant, and we're like, oh my god, I gotta go. So Leaf, I was literally the last person on the plane. I pissed off some people who were on standby. Okay, what's this thing gonna bring, Michael Deeb?
All right, JP, our card does not close for another 2 days. Again, a premium listing on Bring a Trailer. Out of Salt Lake City, Utah, showing 16,000 kilometers from new. One of 55 examples produced in 1993, and it's considered a single model year. It's funny, I did think these were 94s, but apparently they are all 93s, all 55 of them, and just one of 12 originally built for the Japanese market. Now, JP, full retail value for these things is somewhere between 1.7 and 1.9. Some apparently have traded for over $2 million. And I would have suggested, prior to looking at these photos and prior to this car going live on BAT, that this car with just 10,000 miles on the odometer would be a candidate to be in that upper echelon of the values. Again, I know it's a soft market, but cars like this appeal to the 1% of the 1%. And they don't care what the economy looks like when it comes to buying their favorite toys. When they're so rare, they don't come to market very often. But John, this is a poorly executed listing. Our car is currently sitting at $575,000, and that comes to us on just 8 bids. Now, bid count doesn't really mean anything. The guy who wants this car is going to wait and come out at the last minute. But I'd be very surprised if this car broke 1.5, and I don't think somebody's going to let this car go for less than that number. So my bid, JP, is going to be, with an asterisk, $1.1 million where it fails to sell. I think 1.1 is totally in play as far as the hammer, but I don't think that's going to come close to anywhere near what this car is worth or what this seller is expecting as a return for his investment. So 1.1 and an FTS to go with it, JP, to you. What is your bid?
This is a tough one. What does classic.com say? Did you happen to look that up? We love
Oh, now I got to look it back.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
While you're
I think
looking
it was
that up.
1.7. 1.7
Was it
is the average.
1.7? Okay.
$1,730,000 or something, but I'll look it up real quick.
Look, you got to wonder why this person, the owner of this car, is selling it now. What the heck were they thinking? Do we know how long that the seller has owned this car? Did you happen to catch
Since
that?
2023.
Since 2023, like when in 2023? That wasn't.
I don't know that.
Yeah, okay. So not very long. Which is this person attempting to flip the thing, or did they buy it and now they're realizing that, oh my gosh, we're going to the election? Does this person need money? I guess is what I'm getting at. This presentation is poor and it's on BAT, which is not the fastest way to get to market, but this car definitely isn't going to P-Car Market or Cars and Bids. So is this the best because when's the next big car auction? They're over until
Barrett Jackson in January. Scottsdale, sorry. Yeah, and not Barrett Jackson. I mean, Barrett Jackson is the big event, but RM Sotheby's will have a Scottsdale in late January, and that's the next big one. And Classic.com, JP, says that the average is $1.9 million for a one of the 55 RS 3.8s.
Yeah, I think that the person that's selling this, if they're not willing to wait till January, that's not that long from now, but it may as well be a million years from now, because God knows what's going to happen between now and then, with all the instability that we are, predicting, not only immediately after the election, but probably at least till there's an inauguration, whenever that might be. So I think that someone like this is going, oh, you know what? Let's get off this thing, because I'm probably going to need the money first quarter. I could use an extra $1 million, and I definitely don't want to be selling this in December or January of 25. So there might be a bargain to be had here. I'm going to bid 1.25964. So 1,200,964. And say that I'm going to do it. I'm going to say that this car sells. I think this car is a fire sale. That's why it's on BAT. There's no other explanation for a car this nice and with this much provenance to be available right now with this kind of crappy listing. What do you guys think of my crazy idea? Is someone going to get
go get your checkbook
steal,
out.
Right? Or frankly, is that going to be the kind of thing where are the prices going to even go down even more? Is this car going to be worth $800,000 by January? Let us know what you guys think. If it doesn't sell, Kevin's like, yeah, it's going to be on P-Car Market on Thursday. Like 30 minutes later.
Yeah, that's in the chum bucket.
In the chum bucket for $1.75 million. All right. Let us know what you think this car will bring, if it'll even sell at all. What's the next car on the list, Michael Deeb?
All right, JP. I selected for us a 1994 BMW 850 CSi with a 6-speed manual. We covered quite a few of these cars in the early years of Bid Nerds, but we really haven't covered one for a while. I feel like the last one we covered was a very controversial blue one with some weird, warehouse shots, but I can't remember the last one we covered with a manual transmission. Super neat car, JP, from a very interesting era in BMW's illustrious history. If you don't remember, or if you're not that familiar with, the 850 CSi is BMW's big luxury coupe, two-door coupe with a 5.6-liter normally aspirated V12. And if it's a CSi, that means it comes with a 6-speed manual transmission. As far as I can tell, JP, this is one of the only front-engine, rear-wheel drive V12s with a manual you can buy. Ferrari made one, and Aston made one, and surprisingly, BMW made one. So kind of a super cool car. This also, the CSi with the manual, got some, sporty bodywork and sport seats, and I think a little bit more sport tuning with the suspension, probably a different brake pad material, and obviously a higher speed-rated tire. This was quietly, I think, under the radar, BMW's M version of the 8 Series, although it never got the M badge in the United States. John, most V12s from any other company are super soft in the secondary market, but there is a cult following for these 12 cylinders, especially when equipped with the 6-speed manual, as our 850 CSi on Bring a Trailer surely has. Our car is listed out of Santa Rosa and has 80,000 miles on the odometer. It was acquired by the owner in June of last year on Bring a Trailer when he paid $115,000 for the car, showing 79,000 miles. Also in the Bay Area out of Los Altos Hills. It ran no reserve as an alumni back then. So JP, we'll just leave it at there. I don't need to get into this car's entire history. Nice car, fair mileage. His previous sale may work against him as his own worst comp, because even though the market was soft last year, it was stronger then than it is now. And I don't think he stands a chance to get the money he paid for it. How much trouble do you think this guy is in?
Yeah, this can't be a car that a lot of people are looking for right now. Stand by, guys. Having a little computer problem. Our friends from TWR have partnered up with Jaguar. I'm sorry, TWR has partnered up with Magnus Walker to take old XJS 12-cylinder Jaguars and make them into sport purpose, basically, street race cars, kind of like a Singer. And they're coming to Vegas here in a month or so. And we're going to be filming with Magnus out there on the strip, on the F1 course. We're going to take it out in the desert. We're going to have some fun with it. But we were having a conversation with those guys over at TWR, and this car was actually brought up. They're like, yeah, when was the last time you saw a 12-cylinder car with a manual and the engine in the front? He's like, basically it's us or a BMW 8 Series. And he's kind of onto something. What's the Ferrari that had a 12-cylinder?
The 550 Maranello.
Was that the last one with a manual?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's rare air, but these BMWs, boy, you got to have a lot of money to make sure that you can keep. I mean, I got to think that these are as unreliable as the Ferrari or maybe even the XJS. 12 cylinders just means like mo freaking problems. Leaf is asking about the Airstream in the background. Leaf, bro, that's an Airstream trailer. That thing's probably worth more than the car. What's this car going to bring, Michael Deeb?
All right, JP, our car is currently sitting at $66,500 in 3 days. JP, I agree. I think that, if you step back and look at the big picture, these probably aren't the most reliable car, and 12-cylinder cars in the luxury 12-cylinder coupes and sedans in the secondary market in the United States have historically been incredibly soft cars in the secondary market. However, I will stand on the fact that CSIs with the manual transmission have this rather loyal following, and they still bring shockingly good values. JP, I actually think this car has been a bright spot for older BMWs through the softening of the market this year. So I don't think he's going to get $115,000. I don't think he's going to break 100, but I still think he's going to do pretty okay. So John, I'm going to give you the bid of $98,000. The question is he smart enough to take it? And my guess is that if he gets himself a $95,000 to $100,000 reserve, that at 98, BAT may just accept the deal, and he might sell it even if it's not the money he was looking for on paper. So 98,000 to you, JP. Are you going to come in way underneath me on that number?
Yeah, I'm afraid I am. I'm going to come in at where's it at right now?
66.5.
With how much time to go?
3 days.
3 days, yeah. Normally we see, or it's not normally, but it's entirely possible that you see a doubling, at least with old Porsches, but that's not always the case with weird stuff like this. Our buddy Sahan, he's hanging out in the chat. He mentions that he'd rather have the 840 with a manual. That's the 8-cylinder version of this car. Mm-hmm. Certainly a much more reliable car. He's like, just engine swapping it. Well, who cares what engine it has if you're going to swap it, Sahan? What are you doing? Find one of these find one of these that has a blown 12 and swap it with something. I don't know. I just don't think there's many people that want this car, and I think this guy has it tomorrow. I think anyone that has a car like this to market right now needs to sell it, and I think this car is going to go. I think it's going to actually sell for $80,000. I think it's already reached darn near the top of where it's going to be. It's only going to bring another 20 grand. That's my opinion. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. And we have one more car to talk about. What do we got?
All right, JB. Sahan, who we were just talking about, actually selected this car for us for tonight's show. So Sahan is feeling this 1970 Skyline 2000 GT that is currently equipped with an L28 inline-six motor and a 5-speed manual transmission. Our car is out of, and I don't know the name of this, Azusa, A-Z-U-S-A, California, showing 32,000 kilometers. But the big news, JP, is that this Skyline is left-hand drive. I and Sahan both cannot remember seeing a Skyline from this era, this gen of Skyline, even on our shores with left-hand drive. I honestly would have bet a wooden nickel that every single one of them was constructed as right-hand drive. So the fact that this car now employs a later L28 inline six, which probably makes, probably easily over 200, close to, if it's a built motor, which apparently I think it is. It's built by Bob Sharp Racing. This could be 100 horsepower per liter motor. This could literally be a 280 horsepower Skyline, left-hand drive, 5-speed. And JP, it's already set up. Look at those fender flares and the iconic front fender mirrors. It's got the wing. And then, of course, a really cool sort of mini light sort of Panasport style wheels. This is a very cool car. It is super easy to understand why Sahan fell in love with this thing. And JP, while we don't cover a lot of Japanese cars, this is certainly a car that would be fun for anybody. And I'm guessing that this car would still feel fast by today's standards. Imagine close to 300 horsepower in a car that probably weighs a little more than 2,000 pounds. And again, 5-speed manual, limited slip diff. And these cars handle and they drive really well. And you don't have to relearn or retrain your brain on how to drive it because they already moved the wheel to the left for you. This car is in the United States and it's on a clean Montana tile. But as a 1970, this would be an exempt car. I'm fairly certain you could get this car onto a California title. I just think this car is going to have, like Skylines have a very broad appeal, but not necessarily a broad market because not everybody wants to commit to learning how to drive a right-hand drive vehicle. But this would have broad appeal and broad demand because, again, in the marketplace, I can't recall seeing any vintage Skyline that is truly left-hand drive. And so I think this car has a chance to do really, really well. So, JP, I send it back over to you. You and I love old cars. We don't necessarily want to buy a lot of them, but this is a car that makes a very strong case for getting off your wallet and getting very Japanese really cool. Would you drive this to sushi with Rochelle? What do you think?
I've never gotten into the Skyline hype. I love old JDM cars. Not really something that I've really spent a lot of time owning or whatever, because the options are pretty much in America 240Z. That's about it. That's all you get for a really cool old JDM car. And how many of our friends, over at DWA or just there's so many people that just, you say the word Skyline and they just go over the moon. They flip over. It's Skyline. It's the greatest thing. Oh my God, it's Skyline. They're like, teenage girls at a, boy band concert.
Taylor Swift.
Or Taylor Swift. Yeah, right. It's just everybody just goes crazy over the word Skyline. And I've just never bothered to give a crap because I assumed they were all right-hand drive. I had no idea that there was a left-hand drive one. And now seeing one changes my mind. Okay, I can get it. I can go to the Taylor Swift concert and get all excited about this car. But I can't get that excited because I've never driven one. In all the years when people were so excited about it, I've had the opportunity to drive them, but it's like, it's right-hand drive. I don't care. I don't want to. I've always had zero interest. But if someone handed me the keys to this, I would want to. I would look forward to the possibility of drinking the Kool-Aid. This is something that I would love to experience and see what all the hype is about. Question is, would it live up to the hype? And the hype has set a very high bar. So getting behind the wheel of a car like this, I would expect it to, blow me basically. And if it wasn't just awesome, I think I'd be disappointed. And, so don't meet your heroes. I don't know. How much is this thing going to bring?
Okay, JP, our car was originally built as a right-hand drive before being brought to Dubai, where it was converted to left-hand drive. I also want to correct myself. Those really cool Panasport mini light looking wheels are actually 15-inch Watanabe wheels, and I imagine are worth a boatload more money than the wheels I aforementioned, so I want to correct myself there. Looks like our car purchased it in 2017 and imported it to the US in 2019. And then work was completed, involved resurfacing the flywheel, replacing the clutch, and adjusting the brakes back in 2024. Well, that's this year, and it's on a clean Montana title. So, JP, our car is currently sitting at $54,000, and that comes to us by way of 12 bids, and it closes tomorrow. John, I think this car is easily going to bring twice as much money. So I'm going to give you my bid of $110,000 and give it to you with the caveat that if this car brought $150,000, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. But considering that we're right on the cusp of an election and it's been a soft market, I still think 110 is all the money. I think six figures is easily in play. I expect it to sell if it gets to my number range. But again, a left-hand drive Skyline with a big motor. Why wouldn't? I mean, if you are one of those crazy fanboys, your car has arrived. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if 2 or 3 guys were killing themselves to fight over this car, and it just accidentally blew up to 150 grand. In an instant. So 110 to you, JP, but I wouldn't blink at 150. I would be shocked if it stalled out at 80 and FTS. That I doubt will happen. So 110 to you. And let's call out Sahan since he's live in the chase. Sahan, you picked this thing. What's your bid? JP, where you at?
Boy, I have no idea. Let me ask you a question, because we talk about the idea often, conversions to classic original collector cars, conversions that make them better but don't necessarily help the value. We see it often with Ferraris, right? A car that has an F1 transmission, someone goes to the trouble of converting it to a 6-speed. Does that help the value or hurt the value? Same thing with like Toyota Supras. That's a very common thing. You see a lot of those super turbos that had automatics. People convert them, but they don't bring anywhere near what a real manual would bring. They definitely bring more than what an automatic would, but they don't basically make all of a sudden, okay, now the car is worth as much as the original. It just doesn't happen that way. With converting a car like this from right-hand drive to left-hand drive, that's got to be a pretty damn difficult conversion, because where do you even, do you have to get a custom dashboard made? I'm the manual makes sense.
Yeah.
You just take the old switchgear and put the new stuff in, and it's just a lot of bolting and unbolting. But this feels like you've got to create things that simply don't exist. I don't know how they did that. Boy, I this one I'm torn. It is neat, and I think you're right. I think because the conversion is so much more rarer than say just converting from an automatic transmission to a 3-pedal car, that this is going to be kind of a one-of-one deal, and you'll be the only guy that has one of these in your crazy Skyline crew. You said what, 110?
I said 110, but bids are all over the place. JP, I'll help you out because this is a weird one. So George Condor stalls out at 68 with a failed to sell. Sahan says he thinks he doubts that this one will bring 6 figures. Sahan says $92,000. Sahan, now I encourage you to tell us if you think it'll sell for that number. But JP, there are 2 trains of thought here with regards to how the left-hand drive conversion either enhances the appeal or diminishes the value. And so one doesn't necessarily is contingent upon the other. So it could go either way. There's no wrong bid here because we're all going to learn very soon what the market thinks of this car.
Yeah, and we got to come back to the idea that I just think this is the wrong time to sell something this crazy, weird, and special and awesome. And the market isn't huge for something like this, right? Everybody in the world wants that 911 RS that we talked about, even though not everyone in the world can afford it. They look at something like that and immediately see the value once they understand it's an authentic RS 3.8. Yeah. This car, it just has a narrow appeal, and I think someone in the comments just said that the people that want this car are in their sailboat going across the Atlantic, going to a warmer climate, getting ready for winter. Again, and this is professionally, the listing, unlike the previous two listings, is beautiful. Like, this car is listed the way a car as special as this should be. This is the way you do it, guys.
Yeah. Shout out to Heritage Group, GRUPPE, who is the seller. I am not familiar with them as a seller, but their studio shots are on point. Thank you, JP, for pointing that out.
Yeah, very nice listing. I got to go with Sahan since he picked this car. He says 92 grand. What the hell do I know from one of these? I'm going to go 90 grand and say I don't. Does it sell at that? I really have no idea because this is a true one of one car, and I just don't know how crazy the Skyline people are. I know they're crazy, but I don't know if they're loose with their money, and that's what we got to find out. So we will find out in just a couple days. What do you guys think this car will bring, and do you think the election jitters will scare them off, or is this like the other two cars that we talked about? If you're trying to sell something right now, you need to sell it, so they're more likely to make a deal and get that car down the road. Deeb, what were you going to hop in there before we get out of here?
JP, will you pull up that 2011 Porsche 911 Turbo S that is currently live on Bring a Trailer?
I will stand by. Where's the link for that? I don't see it on the list. I thought it was.
It's all the way over there. It's under the 3.8 RS.
It's under the. Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Sorry, guys.
So, JP, this car is listed out of Ketchum, Idaho, and it is a car that I sold when I was a salesperson at Godden Porsche to a wonderful client who lives in Idaho. This particular car has 31,000 miles, and I am representing it on Bring a Trailer. JP, tell me what you think of the photography. I don't think that they're great photos, but I do think that the backdrop is pretty damn sexy and does a great job of selling the romance of owning a super high performance kind of exclusive car. This is a 997.2 Turbo S with a PDK and 530 horsepower, center lock wheels, ceramic brakes, 31,000 original miles, and it's got a one of these tunes on it. I mean, JP, I got to literally read it to you. Evo MS ECU tune and a Sharkworks exhaust. It also comes with a second set of center lock wheels. They are sort of a silver tinted HRE wheels and tires that also come with the car. But the car is in spectacular condition. It is running today. We did this a couple of weeks ago, folks, where JP allowed me to pander to the audience and show you the Fiat that I was selling. But that's not a car I was recommending anybody in the herd buy. If you're a Porsche guy and you got about 100 grand burning a hole in your pocket and you can't afford, or you're not on the list for the next GT or GT3 or the new Turbo or the new RS, this is a heck of a lot of car for the money. And this car is in spectacular condition. It's going to run for 7 days here. We will literally cover it a week from today. We'll cover it on next Wednesday's show right before it closes. But I encourage you to take a peek. And if you know anybody that might be interested in a car like this, I can stand behind this one. This is a really nice car. And of course, I would love the herd to engage and comment on the listings and help me build a little buzz around this listing. So JP, thank you. We got to get Chef to watch. I think Chef might be a buyer for this car, JP. Could you picture him parking this next to his GT3 RS that is also in a bright shade of red?
That would be a perfect companion. Yeah, he has that Ferrari red on his,
Yeah.
which is really rare. But now, and with the black wheels, that would be a very nice pair. I know he wants something like this as a daily driver, and I think that would look really good at the Country Club over there. All right, guys, let us know what you think of Deeb's 997 Turbo that he's listing, the Turbo S. Get in there and make some comments on the listing. Let everyone know that you saw it on Bid Nerds, and we will be back Sunday night with a new episode. Hope you guys are safe out there. We will see you Sunday night. We're taking it out with a commercial. Hey guys, you're probably looking at your watch and wondering if Bid Nerds will ever end. So you better talk to our friends at Our Smiths to make sure your Rolex, Tag Heuer, AP, or any fine timepiece is in tip-top shape. Our Smiths, fine Swiss repair.